Hi guys, this is Dia. I am an 11th grade student of the CBSE board. This video is for all of you guys who are appearing for 10th grade board exams in the months of February and March. It's my advice to you, my suggestions, my tips, the mistakes that I made, and I hope that you guys really don't. To start with, I am sure that all of you guys would be feeling anxious to some extent or the other. To put things in perspective, those of you guys who plan to take science next year, especially hardcore engineering and medical, 10th grade is going to be a cakewalk for you. 11th and 12th grades are going to be the hardest years of your life. When you go into 11th and 12th, you're going to say 10th grade was so easy. Because that's what we say. I am a science student. Even those of you plan to go into commerce and arts, 10th grade is going to be easy for you guys as well on, hindsight when you look back upon it a couple of years later. So it's nothing to stress about so much because 10th grade is only so hyped up because it's the first time that you're going to be sitting for such an exam outside of your school walls on such a high level. Otherwise, 10th grade is really nothing that major. It's not going to have that big an impact on your career. If that is what people have been telling you, it's not true. 10th grade is not going to have that big an impact on your career, but it is still important. Do not pressurize yourself too much because of it, and do not take it too lightly either. Okay, jumping right on to my tips and my mistakes. First off, I am hoping that you guys have started with some of the other reference book and have not listened to your teachers when they've told you just do NCERT. Because NCERT, while that's the only place from where you will get questions, is not the only practice that you need. You need reference books or guidebooks in order to prepare yourself, in order to be confident about it. So the reference books that I used differed from subject to subject, obviously. For maths, I used R.D. Sharma. Science, I used S. Chand. SST, I referred to the Oswald question banks. English, I did not use any reference book. Second language, mine was Sanskrit, so I used together with Sanskrit for that. This was the first blunder that I made. I did not touch any reference book before December. And yes, that is cutting it way too close, but I finished all of the books, by the way. And I finished R.D. Sharma 3 times. 3 times, not kidding. You want to know the trick to that? I did not solve every question. Yes, fine, that is probably cheating to you guys. But no, I did not solve every question, and yet I scored a full 100 on my math exam. Why? Because solving it 3 times made me extremely confident about math. So when I sat for the exam, I knew that I was going to ace the test, which I did. So how do you do that? You solve only those questions which you feel are worth solving. Read a question. If you've solved it, say 5 times before, and you know the answer or you know exactly how it's going to be solved, do not waste your time on it. Put a tick mark in the book itself that you know this question, move on to the next question. Then, if there's a question which is worth solving, you find it, pick up your pen and solve it. Easy as that. If there's a question which you try solving and don't get it, circle it or mark it however you like it. And the next time that you're solving the book, if you have time that is, just solve those questions which you couldn't get the first time. So, for instance, while solving R.D. Sharma, there were maybe about 150 questions in the whole book that I could not solve the first time, which by the way includes the solved examples. I took my mom's help and I got her to write down every single one of those questions on sheets of paper. So, once I was done through the whole book for the first time, I just took those sheets of paper and solved every question on them twice more. So, as you can expect, I was super confident. And for good reason. Next, for science, S. Chand, do not read the theory in S. Chand. Unless that is you're done with your complete science portion before January and you feel like you have ample amount of time in your hands, give it one read. Do not memorize it the way you've memorized NCERT. It would be a mistake. You would be cramming your head with useless information which will not be asked of you in boards. S. Chand, however, make sure that you solve the questions, not just solve them. Like I said, for math reference books, that goes for every reference book. So even there, read all the questions orally, the very short questions, the short questions. And if you feel like there's a question worth writing, go ahead and write it down. Otherwise, don't. For SST, Oswald, like I said, is a good book because you get an idea of all the questions. It has all the marking schemes as well, so you know what points to include in your answer, so that the examiner will give you good marks or full marks. Next, English, like I said, I did not use a reference book. For Sanskrit I use together with. For the grammar, for the literature, everything, it is extremely helpful. The amount of questions that it has, it's amazing. It's fun to solve. And those of you who have taken Sanskrit, consider yourself lucky because Sanskrit is very easy and very scoring. My school personally, every single person who took up Sanskrit ended up getting 95 or more. Most of us got 99 or 100. So you can imagine how easy that is. Next, I'm going to give you my individual tips for every subject that you have, except your second language because that might not be common. Starting off with maths, used to be my favorite subject. So first off, make sure that you do the important chapters with heavy weightage first, like your trigonometry. It requires a lot of practice and it is a very heavy weightage chapter. So just do that first. Do a lot of practice, be confident with those chapters. Make sure that you draw your graphs very neatly. Make sure that in your question paper, all of your diagrams, your rough figures, they should be big enough. So that they're clear to you and they're clear to the examiner. Remember that you're going to have extremely big answer books. They're going to be 40 pages maybe. So there's going to be no shortage of space at all. So if you're anyway going to be leaving space, rather just make your figures a little bigger to utilize the space as well and to make it clear for you as well. And do not try to, draw lines or everything first, like while you're solving the question, because a lot of people struggle with completing the paper on time. So I am sure that you wouldn't want to waste that time in drawing lines or just making your paper look neat. Completing the paper is definitely more important. Another thing to keep in mind, a lot of people get confused, should I start from section D or should I start from section A? It all depends on what works best for you. If you think you're slow at solving math, start from section D. It's gonna give you those, the large amount of marks, the whole bundle of marks in the beginning. And if you start from section A, if you're slow, you might lose, all of those 4-mark questions, which is going to be really bad. Me, I never had a problem in, taking time to solve questions or something. Like my boards paper, I ended up finishing it some 45 minutes early. So I always started from section A, but I repeat, what matters is what works best for you. Do not try to follow some other person's strategy because that may be what works for them, but not for you. That's it for maths, I guess. For science, biology, it's a memorization subject. So memorize everything that there is, everything in the textbook. They could ask you a question from anywhere. Practice all the diagrams. Don't just read them. Draw them by your hand 3 times, 4 times. It may happen that in your board exams, they may not exactly ask you to draw too many diagrams, but it's just better to be safe. You don't want to go up unpracticed and still have a 3-mark question just for a diagram. You're going to regret it. So draw all of those diagrams, take that effort, all the difficult diagrams, the heart, the brain, draw it all out, practice it. For physics, it's a conceptual subject, right? So you need to get all of your concepts cleared. If you haven't got them cleared by now, do it within the next 10-15 days. You do not have that much time left, so just get it done quick, and after that take the time to practice those concepts, solve questions on them and all of that. Another very helpful thing you could do for subjects like physics is explain it to someone. All of you must be struggling with some of the other topic. I struggled a lot with electric generator and electric motor, so I understood it online. And then what I did was explained it to 2 or 3 of my friends. So once I explained it so many times, it became clear to me as well. All of the concepts, by the end of the year, they were crystal clear because I had said it out loud so many times. If you don't have friends who are struggling with concepts, explain it to yourself. I am a person who talks to myself a lot, so I would get in front of my board, my whiteboard that is, and I would explain it to myself as if I was a teacher who was explaining to their class. And a lot of the times I just got my sister to sit there. She's in 4th grade, by the way, but I taught her all of the 10th grade concepts as if she was a 10th grade student herself. It's going to be a bit torturous on your younger siblings, but you're going to get a lot out of it. That's for physics. Chemistry, again, it's a mixture. It has a bit of concepts, it has a bit of memorizing. But I found chemistry easy. Make sure you do carbon very well. It's an important chapter, heavy weightage as well. Periodic properties is a very easy chapter, extremely easy. Just get it done. You'll get a lot of free marks over there. I think that's about it. Keep your basics clear, by the way, especially the first chapter. Make sure that you haven't, you know, skipped out on any of the basics. I'm sure they would be clear to you by now, but still, just in case if anyone has missed it, do not sit for your board exams unless your basic concepts are clear. And that's for science. For SST, I'll be very honest, I hate SST. I have always hated SST. And this was one of the mistakes that I made because I hate SST and because it is only about memorization. Initially, what I did was right after this chapter was taught at school, I would come home and I would do it again, like study it by myself. And then I would realize that when the exams are near, I don't remember anything. I've forgotten every single thing that I had learned, I thought I'd learned. So I would spend that much time again to study those chapters once again for the exam. So in the last 3-4 months, the strategy that I applied was to not study SST. Throughout the months of January and February, I did not study SST. My SST exam, as far as I remember, was on 29th of March. And I had maybe 5 days vacation before it. So all of my SST preparations were done in those 5 days. I gave 1 day to every subject: history, civics, geography, and political science. And the last day was for revision, maps, and all of that. So if you find yourself, facing the same problem, don't waste your time on SST. Or if this is the case for any other subject as well, don't waste so much time over it. Keep it for the end. Sometimes that's the best you can do. Even though it's not advisable to, keep something pending, but there's no point wasting so much time if you feel that it is wasting your time. And memorize everything in those 4 textbooks. Leave nothing. In 2019 boards, what happened was there was one question from political science, political parties chapter, a 5-mark question in sets 2 and 3 about regional political parties. If you notice, there's a map in that chapter where every regional party is marked on the map with their symbols, and no one could imagine that a question could be asked from there, but it was asked. And a lot of people did not know the answer to that question. So we ended up losing those 5 marks. I was one of them, by the way. So just learn everything. That is important only if you're one of those above average students who's trying to bridge the gap between 95 marks and 100 marks. Then that's the case. Do everything extremely thoroughly. Otherwise, you don't need to go that deep into the details because after all, you know yourself better than anyone else. So if you know you're one of those students who gets 80 to 90% marks, and you're not aiming for a 100% score, do not waste your time. Do not cram your head with the information that I personally find useless. As for English, I am a perfectionist when it comes to English. So I would sometimes waste 45 minutes to an hour just thinking of a plot in the middle of the exam for the story writing. I did not do that for boards. My strategy before the boards was in the 5 days holidays that we had before the English paper, every day I would write one story. Every story had a different setting, a different character, a different plot, a different genre, you could say. So what I learned was once I have 5 or 6 plots with me, 5 or 6 storylines, I could mold at least one of them to fit them in the question during the boards. And it worked. I went to the boards with 6 stories in my head and I managed to fit one of them over there perfectly. That saves a lot of time, and you could do the same thing for your long answer questions in the literature section. There's only one question that can be asked from every chapter. They'll maybe change the wordings a little, they'll maybe change the way it's asked, but the answer essentially remains the same. So I wrote one long answer question for every chapter. I marked the important points over there, and I learned those points, so when the question came in the exam, I could just write down those points and formulate my answer around those. So I was prepared for that as well. For literature, make sure you read the textbooks properly. Try to write down questions while you're reading the textbook, possible questions that could be asked. For the poetry, make sure you know all the figures of speech that could be there. And memorize all the names of the poets. Those are my tips for English. And make sure your spoken English is, practiced. You don't speak in your mother tongue all the time. That's going to help improve your grammar, which is directly going to have an impact on your English paper and even the other papers. If you have a good language, the examiner will definitely not be put off by, bad grammar, wrong spellings, all of that. If you've taken Sanskrit, like I said, you are in luck. But make sure you know all the shlokas, uh, make sure you know the meaning to all of them, all the anvar and all, do that perfectly. Make sure your grammar tables are revised, and practice a few letters, a few chitravarnan, and comprehension as well. You can do all of that using Together With. I'm not promoting it, but it's a good book. So you'll have an ample amount of practice over there. Yeah, I think I've covered all the subjects. The next important thing while you're preparing for boards is solving practice papers and sample papers. So in your last month, preferably now is the time, January, you should solve a few sample papers, especially the ones that are released by the board, because I hear that your pattern has been changed and you have more objective type questions as well. So it's very important to have an idea of what kind of a question paper you're going to see during the boards. Also solve previous year's question papers, at least 5 years. But in your batch's case, I think question papers from before that had MCQ type questions as well, so you could definitely go for that. I solved 10 years papers plus OSWA's 5 sample papers, which included the sample paper released by the boards. You don't have to do all of that, just as much as you need, but make sure that you've solved at least 5 question papers of every subject and got them marked by a competent teacher. Don't just solve them and keep it at home. Take it to a teacher, have him or her mark it, so that you get an idea of how much more you need to study and where you need to put your efforts. And if possible, try to solve those on landscape sheets, not the straight portrait ones, but the horizontal landscape sheets. You're going to get an idea of what the word limit is going to be like. So if you are used to writing your answers in portrait, they're naturally going to look shorter to you when you're writing it in landscape, especially English, because it's a subjective subject. So at least 1 or 2 papers, make sure you've written them in landscape mode. And remember to get those marked by a teacher. Another thing that I feel you guys should do is make a timetable. I made a timetable with my dad's assistance for the last couple of months, and every day I had marked how many hours I'm going to study, what subject I'm going to study, and how much time every subject requires, including learning the concepts, solving papers, and everything that you need to do before your boards. I had it broken down into hours, and then I had divided those hours between the 60 days that I had before boards. Make sure that you keep a buffer of 7 to 10 days. Just in case some emergency strikes, you need to have those 7 to 10 days to get back on track. You do not want to lose, something that you could really easily achieve just because of some emergency which could not be avoided. I personally had dengue during January and I was sick for like 3 weeks. I could get no studying done, and I don't want the same thing to happen to you because I struggled a lot after it. But again, I was extremely enthusiastic after it as well. I'm sorry. So I don't think I could have scored as much as I did in boards had I not gone through that phase. But still, like I said, keep a buffer of 7 to 10 days. Just in case everything goes well, it's always good to have a few days extras in there. Isn't it? I'm sorry. Anyway, I think that is more or less it. Oh yes, no, there's more. Hold on. Avoid distractions. Keep away your phones for these couple of months if you feel that you cannot, control yourself. Give it to your parents because most people tend to get a new phone after 10th anyway. So just give it to them for these couple of months or maybe the last month if you feel that you cannot, have a control over yourself. If you feel that you can restrict yourself to like 20 minutes to 30 minutes a day, that's perfectly fine. I did not turn in my phone, but I learned to restrict its usage. And during the exams, don't get stressed. It can be very difficult to get adjusted to that new climate where the school is new, the benches are new, the kind of paper that you see in front is new, the question paper has Hindi written in it as well as English. So it can get a little strange sometimes, but just remember you've studied for it. There's no reason to be worried. And around you, most probably, they're going to be students from your own school. They're going to be your friends sitting around you. So make yourself comfortable. Try to reach the exam set a little early and get acquainted to the climate around you. Like I said, don't waste time with the paper presentation before you're done with the complete paper. Once you're done, then give importance to the little things. Try to make your paper neat and beautiful so that the examiner likes it. Because after a certain amount of marks that you've scored, the last few marks depend on the examiner. They may or they may not give it to you. But at that time, what you need to realize is some things are out of your hands. Just like the sets, you have three sets: set A, set B, and set C. And it may happen that one particular set is more difficult than the other. And at those times, you just need to, you know, just stop, just calm down, and tell yourself that it's okay. What matters is that you gave your best. The last few things that may happen, it depends on luck, it depends on fate, it depends on a lot of other factors. It's important that you do not start cribbing or feeling bad about it, that I wish I'd done just a little bit more or something. Make sure you're perfectly prepared, at you've given your best, and then once you sit for your paper, forget about everything else. If you encounter yourself in the same situation as we did for the SST paper, for instance, do not sit for a whole hour and say, I wish I had learned it, what was it, and what was it. Don't do it. Just do whatever else you know and be satisfied with it. There's not much else you need to do. I come back to the same thing. Board exams are easy, nothing much to be stressed about. I wish you luck and do well in your exams. That's it about it. Thank you.